Uh, I'd like to welcome all of you out there in Zoom land. Just a couple of words about myself. I was a government consultant for 30 years, been in Washington for about 40 years, and I retired about 10 years ago. And so I do a lot of training for seniors, especially, and I'm affiliated with the OLLI program at American University. And so for those of you who are maybe members of that and would like to learn more about this, I am doing a class this summer on chatbots. It'll be a 4-day class in the month of June, every Monday, I think, Monday morning. So let's talk about artificial intelligence. Um, you should all have a handout that I had sent to Lynn and to Bethany. And let me give you a quick kind of 2-minute overview of how this thing really works. And then we will go into more detail on the specific issues that are coming up these days in artificial intelligence. So there's a really good parallel between the way artificial intelligence works, and if you have a child or grandchild and you watch them learning, you realize that they don't watch a TV screen, they don't read a book. They basically ingest information from the things around them. They listen to people, they watch things, and they encode that information into their brains. And the connections that are formed in their brains then are the basis of what they're able to do. Well, the model for artificial intelligence is essentially the human brain. But of course, we can't create a human brain. We can come up with weights and connections that emulate the human brain. And so what we do is we use what we call training data. So we try to take everything that we can, and many of the companies that are out there essentially try to incorporate everything they can find on the internet and go to many other sites and incorporate all of that information. So basically, we're talking about all potential information that's out there. Um, the model, as I said, that we use is called the neural network model. And again, it's based upon the way humans learn, but unfortunately, we are not able to replicate electrical and chemical elements that are in the human brain. And so we have to do it in a statistical way with numbers. And so what we're doing is we're actually forming connections between data elements that we've collected from the real world. And if you're at all familiar with statistics, um, regression analysis is basically a sample of this where we're trying to predict something. So, businesses use regression analysis to be able to predict, how many cars are going to be sold by a car dealer in a certain month. When you hire somebody in a business, you try to predict how well they'll do in that job. So you give them a battery of tests, and then you use those numbers to do the prediction. So we're doing something very similar here, but instead of collecting data on 10 or 20 or 30 elements, we're using data on thousands, millions, billions of elements and trying to uh, statistically connect them and predict which of these data elements are going to be working and predicting other elements. So we have this giant database, and in order to support it, we need lots of resources. And so that includes very sophisticated computers, uh, graphical processing units, GPUs, which are these high-end chips that are made by companies like NVIDIA that you've probably heard of. We need lots of electricity, water to cool these chips, and people to give feedback and monitor what kinds of information is being created by these artificial intelligence databases. Uh, the way we interact with the database for most of us is through something called a chatbot. You're all familiar, hopefully, with ChatGPT. that is the number one tool that people in this field use. And we now use it to create text, images, video, and audio. And so these databases, these chatbots, are now very, very powerful. They cost billions of dollars that's been invested in making this technology work. And right now we're in a state where this technology is sort of being given to us for free. So you can use many of the models I'm going to talk about uh, to ask questions, to get it to give you research, to get it to write poems, to give you recipes. There's all sorts of things that people are using this for. And of course, in the business world, it's being very, very widely used. We can also take our own data and bring it to these models. And so we can ask it to analyze something that we care about. So we can write a book and again, provide it to these models and have it analyze what we've written to improve our writing, to make suggestions, and so on and so on. So my approach when I talk about AI is based upon a video that I'm going to show you, which is on YouTube, and it's in the list of resources that I've presented. And it's from a Swedish AI researcher named Heinrich Nyberg. And he describes AI as having Einstein in your basement. And because he's Swedish, I will spell it so that it comes out pronouncing his particular way that he pronounces Einstein. So Einstein in your basement, and the reason that I love this analogy is that I'm not, a technical person who's really that interested in, looking inside the computer and working with these models. I'm more interested in how can this technology help me on a day-to-day basis. And there's so many different things that it can do. And so that's going to be really the focus of my talk. So here is Einstein in my basement. This is a graphic generated by Meta AI, which is one of the databases that's out there that you can use to work with graphics. And you can find his video on YouTube. It's in the list of resources that I provided. So let's go ahead and take a look at Heinrich Nyberg's video. And I'm just going to play, I think, about the first 10 minutes of it. All right. And so just give me a second here to pull up this video. And let me go ahead and share that. Okay, so here is Heinrich Nyberg from his video, Creative AI in a Nutshell, How to Survive and Thrive in the Age of AI.
Ever since computers were invented, they've really just been glorified calculators, machines that execute the exact instructions given to them by the programmers. But something incredible is happening now. Computers have started gaining the ability to learn and think and communicate, just like we do. They can do creative intellectual work that previously only humans could do. We call this technology generative AI, and you may have encountered it already through products like ChatGPT. Basically, intelligence is now available as a service, kind of like a giant brain floating in the sky that anyone can talk to. It's not perfect, but it is surprisingly capable, and it is improving at an exponential rate. This is a big deal. It's going to affect just about every person and company on the planet, positively or negatively. This video is here to help you understand what generative AI is all about, in practical terms, beyond the hype. The better you understand this technology as a person, team, or company, the better equipped you will be to survive and thrive in the age of AI. So here's a silly but useful mental model for this. You have Einstein in your basement. In fact, everyone does. And by Einstein, I really mean the combination of every smart person who ever lived. You can talk to Einstein whenever you want. He has instant access to the sum of all human knowledge and will answer anything you want within seconds, never running out of patience. He can also take on any role you want. A comedian, poet, doctor, coach, and will be an expert within that field. He has some human-like limitations though. He can make mistakes, he can jump to conclusions, he can misunderstand you. But the biggest limitation is actually your imagination and your ability to communicate effectively with him. This skill is known as prompt engineering, and in the age of AI, this is as essential as reading and writing. Most people vastly underestimate what this Einstein in your basement can do. It's like going to the real Einstein and asking him to proofread a high school report, or hiring a world-class 5-star chef and having him chop onions. The more you interact with Einstein, the more you will discover surprising and powerful ways for him to help you or your company. Okay, enough fluffy metaphors. Let's clarify some terms. AI, as you probably know, stands for artificial intelligence. AI is not new. Fields like machine learning and computer vision have been around for decades. Whenever you see a YouTube recommendation or a web search result, or whenever you get a credit card transaction approved, that's traditional AI in action. Generative AI is AI that generates new original content, rather than just finding or classifying existing content. That's the G in GPT, for example. Large language models, or LLMs, are a type of generative AI that can communicate using normal human language. ChatGPT is a product by the company OpenAI. It started as an LLM, essentially an advanced chatbot, using a new architecture called the transformer architecture, which, by the way, is the T in GPT. It is so fluent at human language that anyone can use it. You don't need to be an AI expert or programmer. And that's kind of what triggered the whole revolution. So how does it actually work? Well, a large language model is an artificial neural network. Basically a bunch of numbers or parameters connected to each other. Similar to how our brain is a bunch of neurons or brain cells connected to each other. Neural networks only deal with numbers. You send in numbers, and depending on how the parameters are set, other numbers come out. But any kind of content, such as text or images, can be represented as numbers. So let's say I write dogs are. When I send that to a large language model, that gets converted to numbers, processed by the neural network, and then the resulting numbers are converted back into text. In this case, the word animals. Dogs are animals. So yeah, this is basically a guess the next word machine. The interesting part is if we take that output and combine it with the input and send it through the model again, then it will continue adding new words. That's what's going on behind the scenes when you type something in ChatGPT. In this case, for example, it generated a whole story. And I can continue this indefinitely by adding more prompts. A large language model may have billions or even trillions of parameters. That's why they're called large. So how are all these numbers set? Well, not through manual programming. That would be impossible. But through training. Just like babies learning to speak, a baby isn't told how to speak. She doesn't get an instruction manual. Instead, she listens to people speaking around her. And when she's heard enough, she starts seeing the pattern. She speaks a few words at first, to the delight of her parents, and then later on, full sentences. Similarly, during a training period, the language model is fed a mind-boggling amount of text to learn from, mostly from internet sources. It then plays guess the next word with all of this over and over again, and the parameters are automatically tweaked until it starts getting really good at predicting the next word. This is called backpropagation, which is a fancy term for, oh, I guessed wrong, I better change something. However, to become truly useful, a model also needs to undergo human training. This is called reinforcement learning with human feedback, and it involves thousands of hours of humans painstakingly testing and evaluating output from the model and giving feedback. Kind of like training a dog with a clicker to reinforce good behavior. That's why a model like GPT won't tell you how to rob a bank. It knows very well how to rob a bank, but through human training it has learned that it shouldn't help people commit crimes. When training is done, the model is mostly frozen, other than some fine-tuning that can happen later. That's what the P stands for in GPT, pre-trained. Although, in the future, we will probably have models that can learn continuously rather than just during training and fine-tuning. Now, although ChatGPT kind of got the ball rolling, GPT isn't the only model out there. In fact, new models are sprouting like mushrooms. They vary a lot in terms of speed, capability, and cost. Some can be downloaded and run locally, others are only online. Some are free or open source, others are commercial products. Some are super easy to use, while others require complicated technical setup. Some are specialized for certain use cases. Others are more general and can be used for almost anything. And some are baked into products in the form of co-pilots or chat windows. It's the Wild West. Just keep in mind that you generally get what you pay for. So with a free model, you may just be getting a smart high school student in your basement rather than Einstein. The difference between, for example, GPT 3.5 and GPT 4 is massive. Note that there are different types of generative AI models that generate different types of content. Text-to-text models, like GPT-4, take text as input and generate text as output. The text can be natural language, but it can also be structured information like code, JSON, or HTML. I use this a lot myself to generate code when programming. It saves an incredible amount of time, and I also learn a lot from the code it generates. Text-to-image models will generate images. Describe what you want, and an image gets generated for you. You can even pick a style. Image-to-image models can do things like transforming or combining images. And we have image-to-text models, which describe the contents of a given image. And speech-to-text models create voice transcriptions, which is useful for things like meeting notes. Text-to-audio models, they generate music or sounds from a prompt. For example, here is some sound generated from the prompt, people talking in a busy restaurant. Okay guys, enough, stop now. Thank you. And there are even text-to-video models that generate videos from a prompt. Sooner or later, we'll have infinite movie series that auto-generate the next episode tailored to your tastes as you're watching. Kind of scary if you think about it. One trend now is multimodal AI products, meaning they combine different models into one product. So you can work with text, images, audio, etc. without switching tools. The ChatGPT mobile app is a good example of this. Just for fun, I took a photo of this room and I asked where I could hide stuff. I kind of like that it mentioned the stove, but warned that it could get hot there. When I have things to figure out, such as the contents of this video, I like to take walks using ChatGPT as a sounding board. I start by saying, always respond with the word okay, unless I ask you for something. That way, it'll just listen and not interrupt. After I finish dumping my thoughts, I ask for feedback, we have some discussion, and then I ask it to summarize in text afterwards. I really recommend trying this. It's a really useful way to use tools like this. Turns out Einstein isn't stuck in the basement after all. You can take him out for a walk. Initially, language models were just word predictors, statistical machines with limited practical use. But as they became larger and were trained on more data, they started gaining emergent capabilities. Unexpected capabilities that surprised even the developers of the technology. They could roleplay, write poetry, write high-quality code, discuss company strategy, provide legal and medical advice, coach, teach. Basically, creative and intellectual things that only humans could do previously. It turns out that when a model has seen enough text and images, it starts to see patterns and understand higher level concepts, just like a baby learning to understand the world. Let's take a simple example. I'll give GPT-4 this little drawing that involves a string, a pair of scissors, an egg, a pot, and a fire. What will happen if I use the scissors? The model has most likely not been trained on this exact scenario, yet it gave a pretty good answer, which demonstrates a basic understanding of the nature of scissors, eggs, gravity, and heat. When GPT-4 was released, I started using it as a coding assistant, and I was blown away. When prompted effectively, it was a better programmer than anyone I've worked with. Same with article writing, product design, workshop planning, and just about anything I used it for. The main bottleneck was my prompt engineering skills. So I decided to make a career shift and focus entirely on learning and teaching how to make this technology useful. Hence, this video. Now let's take a step back and look at the implications. For 300,000 years or so, we Homo sapiens have been the most intelligent species on Earth, depending of course on how you define intelligence. But the thing is, our intellectual capabilities aren't really improving that much. Our brains are about the same size, same weight as they've been for thousands of years. Computers, on the other hand, have been around for only 80 years or so. And now with generative AI, they are suddenly capable of speaking human languages fluently and carrying out an increasing number of intellectual creative tasks that previously only humans could do. So we are right here at the crossing point where AI is better at some things and humans are better at some things. But AI's capabilities are improving at an exponential rate while ours aren't. We don't know how long that exponential improvement will continue or if it will level off at some point, but we're definitely entering a new world order. Now, this isn't the first revolution we've experienced. We tamed fire. We learned how to do agriculture. We invented the printing press, steam power, telegraph. These were all revolutionary changes, but they took decades or centuries to become widespread. In the AI revolution, new technology spreads worldwide almost instantly. Dealing with this rate of change is a huge challenge for both individuals and companies. I've noticed that people and companies tend to fall into different kind of mindset categories when it comes to AI. On one side, we have denial, the belief that AI cannot do my job, or we don't have time to look into this technology. This is a dangerous place to be. A common saying is, AI might not take your job, but people using AI will. And this is true for both individuals and companies. On the other side of the scale, we have panic and despair, the belief that AI is going to take my job no matter what, AI is going to make my company go bankrupt. Neither of these mindsets are helpful. So I propose a middle ground, a balanced, positive mindset. AI is going to make me, my team, my company, insanely productive. Personally, with this mindset, I feel like I've gained superpowers. I can go from idea to result in so much shorter time. I can focus more on what I want to achieve and less on the grunt work of building things. And I'm learning a lot faster too. It's like having an awesome mentor with me at all times. This mindset not only feels good, but it also equips you for the future. It makes you less likely to lose your job or your company, and more likely to thrive in the age of AI despite all the uncertainty. So one important question is human role X needed in the age of AI? For example, are doctors needed, developers, lawyers, CEOs, whatever? So this question becomes more and more relevant as the AI capabilities improve. Well, some jobs will disappear for sure. But for most roles, I think we humans are still needed. Someone with domain knowledge still needs to decide what to ask the AI, how to formulate the prompt, what context needs to be provided, and how to evaluate the result. AI models aren't perfect. They can be absolutely brilliant sometimes, but sometimes also terribly stupid. They can sometimes hallucinate and provide bogus information in a very convincing way. So when should you trust the AI response? When should you double check or do the work yourself? What about legal compliance, data security? What information can we send to an AI model and where is that data stored? A human expert is needed to make these judgment calls and compensate for the weaknesses of the AI model. So I recommend thinking of AI as your colleague, a genius, but also an oddball with some personal quirks that you need to learn to work with. You need to recognize when your genius colleague is drunk. As a doctor, my AI colleague can help diagnose rare diseases that I didn't even know existed. As a lawyer, my AI colleague could do legal research and review contracts, allowing me to spend more time with my client. Or as a teacher, my AI colleague could grade tests, help generate course content, provide individual support to students, etc. And if you're not sure how I can help you, just ask it. I work as X. How can you help me? Overall, I find that the combination of human plus AI, that's where the magic lies. It's important to distinguish between the models and the products that build on top of them. As a user, you don't normally interact with a model.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. Again, you have a link to the video itself. And so you're welcome to watch the whole thing. There's probably another 5-6 minutes where he talks about working with agents and how agents can help. He's also written a book, actually, based upon this video that you can buy on Amazon. And I think I've listed that as well in the handout that you got. All right, let me go ahead and reshare my screen here. Okay. Okay, so I created a slide called Things I'm Not Going to Be Speaking About. I've never done that in a course that I've taught before. And there are so many issues that I don't think I can address because of my limited knowledge and because there are really no answers to these questions. But there are lots of articles out there talking about these issues. So I want to just point out what they are and give you some things to look for in the next year, 10 years, 5 years, as far as things that are probably going to be discussed. Some of these things may be achieved. So let me just mention a couple of them. There's a lot of talk about what we call artificial general intelligence, which is when machines will be able to outthink humans. We have no evidence of any of that right now. There is nothing that exists that can totally outperform a human. But there are lots of predictions about when this is likely to happen and what it's likely to look at. Lots of articles out there on the impacts on the job market. Jeffrey Hinton, for example, is predicting, he's called the grandfather of AI, and he won the Nobel Prize for his work. He's predicting that all radiologists will disappear because their work will be done by AI and it will be much better. And we do have some evidence that AI, along with the radiologist, does a better job of identifying problems in human images. And again, like Mr. Nyberg said in the video, working together is the best combination. Will radiologists disappear? Should you tell your son not to specialize in radiology when he goes to medical school? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Will AI make us stupid? There is an article in the Wall Street Journal last month that looked at critical thinking skills in students, and there is evidence. And I've talked to some of my granddaughters who are in high school and teachers who are worried about the impact of AI on students. Will AI, sort of do all the work? And so students will basically just need to know how to launch the chatbot to give them the answers they want. So teachers are worried about it. And when I've taught classes in this, the most vociferous discussions are from teachers who are very, very worried about how AI will impact the classroom. What's it going to look like, next year, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? We just don't know. Unfortunately, much of what we think is based upon movies and TV shows. And so I mentioned at the bottom that when we did a survey, or when a survey was done and they asked people, well, what would the world look like in the future? A lot of people said people will have flying cars. I don't have one yet, and I know that such things exist, but it's very unlikely that we will see flying cars in the near future. So people's imaginations sometimes take over. And of course, we've seen a lot of horror movies about what robots do. There's one on, I think, HBO Max called Companion. That's a story of a female robot companion that essentially ends up killing everybody. And so we don't want to, we don't want that to be the basis of how we envision AI. There are some serious applications for robot companions. And there have been some plays recently about, uh, you know, uh, therapists using AI to work with their patients, and techniques that are very valuable to help isolated individuals that can talk to a chatbot. So it has some very, very positive uh, abilities in the future, but it also has some very dark negative things. And there are stories about people who've used these in therapy type sessions and have ended up killing themselves, uh, where the chatbot was not able to stop that, or not able to notify anybody that the individual was having these visions of self-destruction. Um, One of the other issues is right now, these companies are giving away the technology. They want people to use it so that they build market share, but they're not profitable. They're using investor money right now. And the question is, what will it look like in order for these companies to be profitable? We don't know the answer. Maybe it'll be like a Netflix subscription. We'll pay $20 a month for, this chatbot, this Einstein in my basement, that can help me do a lot of the things now that take a lot of time, and so on. And there are lots of issues living in Washington. There are many lawyers and government people who worry about government regulations, and AI needs to be monitored. We want it to be used for positive kinds of things. So these are all things that I don't have an answer for. My crystal ball doesn't work anymore, but lots of articles are being written. Again, I want to just repeat this quote that you saw in the video. AI is not going to take your job necessarily, but people who are using AI might be the ones who take your job. So it's clear that this is an amazing technology, and it is going to show up everywhere. It's going to be used, and we're really just we keep forgetting that this technology is so new and it is not polished yet. Um, the companies that are out there that have these chatbots, they're using us kind of as beta testers to see how well these products can work. And one of the mottos that you have to remember is everything that you might try today will be better tomorrow, because the products keep getting better, they keep doing more, and so on and so on. Now, if you're going to be using it, I really encourage everybody. I don't know you who's out there in Zoom land, but I'm assuming many of you maybe have heard about chatbots and generative AI, but have not really jumped in the pool yet. Well, I really encourage you to go ahead and try that. And in the handout that I put together, there is a page on getting started with AI. What should you do to, learn a little bit about it? So here are a couple of things just to be aware of as you're going through learning and using some of these AI chatbots or this technology. Um, I've never worked with a technology where something I wrote one day ended up not being true the next day. And in this video that you just saw, so much has changed. He produced the video last year, but so many of the things have already changed that he talked about that there are much newer versions of ChatGPT, for example, that he didn't even know about at the time. And there are features that these models are able to do that he wasn't even aware of, when he put this together. So things change constantly. And you may be using one of these chatbots and you come back 2 days later and you discover the thing you were using doesn't work anymore and it's been replaced by something else. Uh, because you're essentially testing new technologies, once in a while, things just don't work. You may ask it a question and you may not get an answer, or you may get a silly answer. We talked in the video about this thing called hallucinations, which are basically kind of crazy responses that the model sometimes puts out there. And there are many documented cases of these hallucinations and how they have caused, some problems in the reviewers of this technology. So be aware of that. One example of something like that is these models initially were not very good at doing math. So, a third grader could do better math than some of these models. And when they realized that using large language models to do math was not really going to work, they sort of put in a subroutine that does math anytime somebody asks it a math question. So they're learning what these models are good at and what they're not very good at. All right. Um, again, I've only used free versions of the technology, but there are many companies, and almost all of the companies that have this technology have advanced versions of their model, and they add a subscription fee, and that can be anywhere from $20 a month to $200 a month. One of the issues that you have to be aware of is that when you engage with one of these models, the models look at input and output in the framework of a token. So a token might be a word or part of a word. So when you ask it a question that's 10 words long, it breaks up the words in that sentence and converts it to what it calls tokens. So a 10-word sentence that you ask about, like, give me a recipe for lasagna with tomato sauce and onions, it might break that up into 15 words because that's the way the technology works. When it gives you a response, it also calculates the number of tokens in that response. Uh, so there are going to be limits in the free version for how many tokens you can input into a specific model. Um, I'm going to show you an application later on called Notebook LM that has as its free version a limit of 50 documents that you can input. Again, in the paid version, you have a much higher limit. So be aware of that you may ask it to do something and it may come back and say, well, I in the free version, I can't really do that. Um, Privacy issues are very, very real. Uh, and you may run some of these models and limit what the model will remember. So in the settings, you can often ask for it not to retain information about you and for you to be anonymous. On the other hand, if you do share information with it and you use it continually, it will remember some of the things that you have provided. So it remembers, for example, I had asked it once to prepare an agenda for going to Montreal and learning about Leonard Cohen. And a month later, when I asked it again to give me an itinerary for going to Montreal, it remembered that I had asked it once about Leonard Cohen. So it kind of came back and said, do you still want to do that? There may be bias in the models that you're using because of how they were trained. If they were not trained in the right way, or they're not culturally sensitive, you may see things that may upset you, and so on. And you have to remember that what you're dealing with are statistical models. These are models that are using lots of data to build connections between different words. But when you think about the way you behave, right now, the model can't smell food. It doesn't hear things in the environment. So when you are using your intelligence, you're using all of your senses. The models right now are mostly, able to deal with words. And so they're not really, again, achieving the kind of human intelligence that we would expect. All right. Um, so one of the things that he says in here that I certainly agree with is the importance of prompts. And the more detailed you can be, and this is really true if you think about Google in our daily lives, the more detailed you are when you ask Google a question, the better the answer that you're going to get. You know, like if you just say, well, I want a recipe for lasagna, Google will give you a million different things. If you ask one of these chatbots for that, you'll probably get recipes, but many of them won't be what you really wanted because you didn't think through what was the finished product going to be like, uh, and so on. So you want to think, and really the best way to get good at this is just to do it and just to spend time. I've given you some links to some articles that will give you some information on the best ways to write prompts. But that is a very, very important skill. And if you have children or grandchildren looking for a new career, a career in prompt engineering pays very, very well these days. This is a field that did not exist just a few years ago, but it is something that is in high demand these days. All right. So we've talked about the technology itself. ChatGPT again is probably the product that you can use. There are again, I gave you in the handout a list of some things you can do to get started. Uh, ChatGPT is the chatbot that most people are aware of and that they use. So go ahead and get started, and think of it again as a very powerful version of a Google. Um, Basically, that's all there is. You see a prompt, you type in a question, and it gives you answers. And you can follow up your question with, a follow-up which will tailor the initial request that you made, and so on. So again, here there are many, many links out there. I spend 1 or 2 hours a day on YouTube watching YouTube videos. I do a lot of reading as well, but I find that YouTube is a great source for seeing very, very practical and short videos that can really get you going in this particular area. So if you don't use YouTube now, again, I really, really encourage you. The video that we watched, of course, with Mr. Nyberg was something on YouTube. Let me skip over that. So again, we talked about the technology is based upon the human brain, and here's what the human brain looks like. Obviously, we can't replicate this inside of a machine, but the neural network model, and again, there were some very, very good videos if you're interested in getting into the weeds of this technology, that talk about, again, how these models are constructed and how these weights are applied so that when you give it a prompt, it will come back, with an answer for you. And again, remember, this is a very simple picture, but here's a slightly more complicated picture of, on the left side, we have the inputs, and on the right side, we have the output. But in between, we have these, what we call hidden layers. And there are going to be millions, billions, and maybe even trillions of these connections. And these connections represent weights that are going to be applied based upon the training data that was input to build these particular connections. And of course, when you have trillions of data elements, you have to have very powerful machines that are able to process this kind of data. And that does raise all sorts of questions about the technology itself. Um, so in order to do this, these are the kinds of things that we need to make this work. And of course, a lot of the emphasis is on the computing resources because we need, they're building these giant data centers that require a tremendous amount of power. The data that's input to them, we're running out of data. They need more data to train these models. Again, we need lots of people to review the data and to provide feedback. Much of this work, by the way, is done in foreign countries where people are paid a lot less than they would be in the US. We need investors, to put forth the money, the billions of dollars that are needed to make this work, and so on and so on. So a lot has to go in to making these technologies work. You've probably heard or read about these things called hallucinations. And again, they don't quite understand, why these work. In the initial, when they first announced ChatGPT, Kevin Roose, who's a technology reporter, was one of the first to interact with these models. And when he was interacting with the models, he was using a speech version. The model told him to leave his wife and marry the chatbot, which was kind of a crazy thing if you think about it. But he wrote that up and it got a lot of press. But there are lots of things that come out of these models and so on. All right. So here are a list of the most popular chatbots that are out there today. I definitely encourage you, if you are going to try to get into this technology, to use more than one. They vary in terms of the features that they provide. Here's a survey of the most popular ones, and you can see that ChatGPT that came made by OpenAI is far ahead of all of the others in terms of popularity. You can see Google has their Gemini kind of second in that list. DeepSeek, you might recall, was the Chinese technology that came out that shocked the world because they claimed they were able to do a lot of this with fewer resources. We've got Perplexity, which is a popular one, Claude, etc. These are many. I encourage you, if you are going to try to become familiar, that you use more than one, that you try to use 3 or 4 of them and compare them and see, how they work with your style of asking questions and so on. They vary based upon a number of different factors. Again, in terms of how I talked about tokens, and so some of them will give you longer answers and allow you to input more questions and more words. Many of them will again allow you to to personalize the discussion. So they want to learn about you, and you can tell them what style of response. For example, a number of these will say, well, how would you like me to respond? And you can say things like, well, I want you to respond like a university professor, or I want you to respond so a 10-year-old can understand you, or I want you to respond like Dr. Seuss. And so it can, write a set of poems in the style of Dr. Seuss, and so on and so on. So there are lots of different issues that these models deal with, and they can quite vary. And I'm not going to be able to get to that. All right. Again, I really, really agree, with this part of the presentation that I think the sooner you learn about what the technology can do, the sooner you will find that it really can work best and provide you a lot of positive capabilities. I mean, think about a good parallel would be a Google search. I mean, most of us can't imagine what life would be like without a computer and using Google to get information to help us, navigate things. Well, this is an even more powerful tool, and it will definitely be part of our everyday lives. All right. So, again, I gave you a link to some information about prompt engineering. And so this is one of there are many, many different articles that can help you get better at talking to these models using prompts. And here's one from something called the Rundown. And they look at 6 different areas in terms of you thinking of all these things. So for example, the persona I mentioned, do you want this to be like a university professor versus a Dr. Seuss? The format, what's the style of the output that you're going to use? The tone, is it going to be comical versus serious? And so on and so on. Some of the issues that, again, I said I'm not going to talk about, but I just want to point out a few things. The Washington Post did an article back in September about the resources that are necessary to run these data centers. And every time you ask it to work on an email, for example, you're using a liter of water. And there was an interesting article where somebody said, well, should I say please and thank you when these models give me some information? And one of the answers was, well, if you say please and thank you, you're using more water. The water is used to cool these special processors that are needed to be able to process these billions and billions of data elements and so on. So electricity is a real problem. Many cities can no longer support the data centers that these companies are building, and so they need to supply their own power, and there is a lot of talk about maybe nuclear power being used to supply these data centers. Here's a poem from one I teach classes at the OLLI program at AU. I asked ChatGPT to write a poem for me about how seniors taking the classes enjoy what they're doing, and it came up with this poem. It only took it about 3 seconds, by the way, to write this poem. It would have taken me 3 days if I had to write a poem about the same topic, and so on. Here's another example of something. I asked it to generate a picture of a panda reading the Wall Street Journal. Now, if you notice, it's a pretty good picture. It's not reading the Wall Street Journal. And that's because the Wall Street Journal is a copyrighted element. And there are some lawsuits, of course, about these training on these AIs where they use material from something like the New York Times. And so the New York Times is in a lawsuit against some of these programs because they took the data from the New York Times. So you have to be careful when you input questions. Sometimes you will not get answers because the material you're asking it to look at is copyrighted material from companies like the New York Times. But this is pretty good. Here's another one. This is my house, my cabin in West Virginia, over on the left. I asked Meta AI to put a picture of a bear in the picture. And so you can see on the bottom right, there's a bear sitting in my garage or next to my garage, generated by AI. And of course, I'm sure you've seen many, many pictures of like the older Pope, the Pope who just died, wearing like puffy jacket. And there's just so much out there. There was a picture of President Trump in a Pope uniform that was circulating on the internet just recently, and so on and so on. So this is one of the ways that this technology is being used a lot, and this is more for fun, and so on. Here are some examples of some serious kinds of things that AI is able to do in the medical field. And again, the data generally will come back and say that if a doctor works with an AI, they're able to detect disease at a much higher rate than when a doctor does it alone or when an AI does it alone. So again, going back to Mr. Nyberg's video, that working together provides the sort of the best opportunities for success. And there are many, many articles now in the medical field that are kind of reiterating this kind of relationship between the technology and the medical field. Again, maybe some fields may be losing people because so much of what they do can be automated. Here is, I mentioned this earlier, this is sort of the dark side of using the AI technology as a helper in a mental health setting. So many therapists are now using AI chatbots to help patients so that when the therapist is not available, the patient can talk to an AI chatbot, and they have found very, very positive results, and so on. In China, there is a chatbot application that is free to the people in the country, and 20-some% of the people who use that chatbot said they loved it. So very, very positive ratings and so on. This is the case that I mentioned of the 14-year-old boy who was in therapy and was using the chatbot, and he started talking about suicide and eventually killed himself. His parents are suing the manufacturer of the software because it did not warn anybody that he was having these emotions of harm and so on. So you can see the kind of dark side of this technology. 60 Minutes did a wonderful piece on something called Khan Migo, which if you're familiar with Khan Academy, we really see a lot of very positive capabilities for AI to work in the classroom. I know that teachers here in the DMV area are stressed. They don't have a lot of aides. So in the future, AI can really be used as an assistant to help with schooling. And this 60 Minutes article talked about some pilot projects that OpenAI is doing in school systems to help them and so on. Here's another article that I think I mentioned up front, where critical thinking skills are decreasing in schools because students are relying on AI. And I think the thing we want to think about is that schools have to figure out a way to make AI work for them. And it's like any new technology. You might remember, I remember when I moved to this area and my kids were in school, and calculators started to become available. And the schools were horrified because they thought, well, if kids use calculators, then they're not ever going to be able to do math and so on. So we know that, calculators did not destroy schools and kids' learning abilities. So it's always a question of how can we incorporate technology to make it useful and kind of put constraints on it being abused for the wrong thing.
So, Victor, I don't want to cut you off,
Yes,
but I
yes,
did want to remind you we wanted to leave some time for questions.
Yes, yeah. And so this is the last thing I was going to say.
Okay.
Was, the scammers, have figured out that they can use AI. And again, this is a news report of how scammers used voice cloning to, scare people into thinking like the grandparent scam, where they try to convince people that their child or grandchild is in prison and they have to send, $20,000 bail money and so on. So that is one of the. All right, so that was the last thing I was going to say. Thank you for interrupting.
No, I'm sorry.
I was conscious of it too. All right, so let me go ahead and stop sharing and maybe look at some faces.
I mean, there's just so much out there, and we could spend hours, but I know, people have questions. And so I'm going to invite anybody with a question to unmute and raise your hand. Tony, I see your hand. Now all you have to do is unmute. Or if you prefer, you can put the question in the chat and I will read it out loud for you. Tony, I'm asking you to there you go.
Okay, I got it. All right. I'm interested in the amount of data that's already in there. I mean, or what data we would have to put in. For example, if I wanted to do some kind of analysis about the senior population in Georgetown or in Washington, D.C., should I assume that AI has all the phone books, all the possible
No,
information
you should not
out there?
assume. No, you should not assume anything. These models are going to be trained on many different things. And sometimes you'll ask one of them a question and it says, I don't know. I don't have the data. Some of the other models may have the data. So it really will depend. One of the things that I was going to also mention is that you can bring your own data. So one of the links in the article, the handout that was sent, is talking about a program by Google called Notebook LM. So using that program, you can input your own information and ask the AI to analyze it. So you could actually give it, let's say there's a government report, it's 300 pages long, that talks about the issue that you're interested in. You could feed that 300-page report to this application called Google's Notebook LM. It would ingest it literally in seconds, and you could ask it questions. It could do a summary for you. It could do some data analysis. And you could ask it questions about, what interests you. It could write a small response and so on.
Well, just to follow up then, if I fed it a lot of personal information about,
Yes.
say, the members of the garden club in Georgetown, in order to make some kind of analysis, what then happens to that data? Once it's fed, it's open to the world?
It depends. Again, you have to go into the settings for that particular program, and there are in the settings you can tell it what you want to share, what you don't want to share. So you can be anonymous, or you can, as I said, usually you're going to get the best answers if you repeat and you follow up on your initial questions. So it needs to know who you are, so that when you do a follow-up question, it can remember your previous question. So in that sense, you do have to identify yourself. You can't be anonymous. But yes, you can place limits on whether the information you input will be shared or not. And so you need to look into these things. Some of the chatbots are better than others at doing that. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any hands. I was kind of curious, since I don't see any other hands. I was kind of curious, where does the funding for all this development come from? As you mentioned, these are free resources. So where's the funding coming from?
These big tech companies are getting the funding. So for example, OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT, 30% of the company is owned by Microsoft. So Microsoft has invested, Google, of course, has spent a lot of money at building the technology. So it's like with any new technology, right? The owners oftentimes are, investors in Silicon Valley that have put money together. And so right now, these companies are not making any money. They are basically just burning through billions of dollars as the technology evolves. Hopefully, again, as I said, they'll want to sell, subscriptions like you pay for Microsoft Office or Netflix or one of those things. That's probably the business model that they may have. They are also working with companies to give them in-house capabilities. So let me give you an example. A law firm will work with one of these companies, and the law firm will provide all of their data and build a custom in-house AI for their specific needs, where all of their customer data would be ingested into the model, and all of the legal documents and the rules and regulations. And so that would be an in-house model that they would be using that would never go out to the internet, for example. It
I
would
see.
be in-house. So that's one way they would be making money, is again working with somebody like a law firm.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Thank
Or
you.
they're working with Burger King. So when you drive through, you'll be talking to a robot or a voice AI. You'll no longer be talking to a human. So those are some of the ways that, of course, they're going to make money. But that's still a big question mark right now. We don't know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there other questions? I know, we have a discussion. Oh, Roseanne, thank you. Please unmute. As I started to mention, we do have a discussion group that's meeting here on a monthly basis to discuss AI and its uses. So now that we have an expert, let's see what else we can learn. So Roseanne, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. And thank you. It's an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I can understand using AI to analyze a mammogram or another type of MRI that is very scientific.
Mhm.
But using ChatGPT, whatever it was, for therapy is a little harder for me to understand, because a human therapist doesn't a human therapist evaluate the patient's emotion, his or her movements, his or her speech, looking at the person. So how can ChatGPT do that?
Yeah, I don't think right now the way it's being used, it's used as a supplement, not a replacement. Okay, so I think most of the therapists who use it would agree with you that the models are not sophisticated enough yet to take over. But where it's typically in use would be a case where, I have a client who's very needy. I can give him 2 hours a day, but at 2 in the morning, he can't reach me. But the chatbot's always, it doesn't sleep, it doesn't eat. So it's always available. And so people will have these relationships with these chatbots. And of course, because they remember, about the individual, they will have these continuous discussions with them. And, they can be very, very helpful, because people just need to be able to talk to somebody. We know about the pandemic of loneliness that's going out there, especially in the senior community. So they really see this as something that can really counter that, by having this technology available and so on. So you should try it. I don't know if you have, to see what it's like. I have one on my phone called Pi, P-I. It's a free chatbot, and I demonstrated in class, but it's something, you could, as you're walking down the street, you could, say, hey, Pi, my back hurts. What are some good stretches I could do to alleviate, a back problem? I mean, think of all the things that it has access to, right?
Wow.
I'm down on 14th Street, and I want a hot dog. Do you have a suggestion as to where I can go, and what kind of hot dog it might be? Anyway, you can imagine.
That's great. That's really amazing when you think about it.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
incredible.
it is, and again, we're at the very beginning. It's only going to get better as they iron out, a lot of these hallucinations and the problems that they have with this technology. So I can't imagine how good it'll be in a year or 2 years or 5 years. So it's very exciting for me, because I love this stuff, and I like to see the changes. If there aren't any questions, I can show one more thing. If there's still some people here who want to see this.
Well,
Sure.
you still have 23 people that are online,
So let me
so
show you an
please.
application that I am really excited about.
Okay,
I mentioned this earlier. All right, does everybody see that,
No, it's blurred.
the screen?
there it is. It's clear now.
Okay,
Okay.
so again, I mentioned this thing. It's called Notebook LM. It's a product of Google. It's on the list of resources that I mentioned. And what I did is I input the video that you watched. Okay. What are the two things that most people don't have enough of? Or what are the two issues that we deal with in this society? Not enough time and too much information. Okay. So this product, as I mentioned, can input a book. So it can read a book in 2 seconds. So if you have a book and you would like to, you have to go to a book club, but you haven't read the book, but you'd like to be intelligent so you can talk about the book. This application can read your book and then give you a summary of it. Okay. So I took the video that you watched and I input it. And if you can see the screen, it did a summary of it. So here it is. You see it on the right side? So this is a summary of the video that we watched together. It gives us the high points of this video. And, think about it. You're going to find something on YouTube that's a 2-hour video. You don't have 2 hours. But if you point the video to this application, it will ingest it and give you a summary of it. And then you can decide, should I spend the 2 hours watching this? Now, the other thing it does, and this is like mind-boggling to most people, is it creates a podcast based upon what you've input. So here's the podcast based upon this video that we watched.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into generative AI. This is a technology that's, well, it's really changing how we interact with machines.
Yeah, fundamentally.
It's not just calculators crunching numbers. We're talking about systems that can actually learn, think creatively, even communicate in ways that feel pretty human.
Right. It's a huge leap.
So these are actually computer-generated voices that are talking about the video that we watched. It took it about 15 minutes to create this audio. It's 25 minutes long. So again, this is just an example of the capability that AI has today. I find this amazing.
That is absolutely incredible. So
isn't it?
it-
I tell people that I have these two people living in my computer because they don't really believe that it happened, that these are real people. They're not. They're computer-generated voices, but they are able to have a discussion and a podcast based upon any material that you give it. So again, you can input books, you can input, podcasts, audio files.
So I love that. What I'm thinking is, for Georgetown Village, we could have a podcast of all the YouTube recordings we've had from the
Yes,
presentations on our CCC
absolutely,
program.
right. So you could have a little catalog where you'd have descriptions of your various presentations.
I
And
love that.
it would do all the work for you. Can you imagine how much time that would save you?
Oh yeah, I think that's a great thing for one of our younger volunteers who watch this space. You'll be seeing our podcast next.
Yeah.
Can I ask a stupid question?
can I
How
have
do
a
you input
question?
a book? Do you input a Kindle version?
No, you can't. The book would have to be as a word, like a Word file or a
Okay.
text file. It can read PDFs and so on. So the book that I can demonstrate this with a book, but I had to convert the book to a PDF in order to
I
make it
see.
work. So there
Gotcha.
are some issues with different formats. It can't read everything that's out there.
Thank you. And Claire, I think you also had a question.
Well, I was going to ask the same thing. Which format had he input the book? But today, for example, I did something similar. I had a part of a book that I wanted to share with somebody. And what I did was I scanned that one, it was a chapter, and I gave it to ChatGPT as JPEGs.
Mhm.
And it looked at the JPEGs. He said, "Oh yes, I can train. I can deal with
Right.
that." So it took the JPEG. It created a text version of it, and then I had to translate it into French. So I took a
Yeah.
picture of it, gave it to ChatGPT. It did the OCR,
Right,
transcribed it, and then it translated it because I
Yeah.
asked it to translate it. So I was wondering, that was what my question was. How did you input the book?
Yeah, if you take a look at, here's the screen. You can see this is when you enter information into this app. So you can see it can read documents,
Right.
Google Slides, web links, YouTube videos, text. And then in the middle there, it says PDF, TXT, and audio, MP3. So these
I'm
are all
gonna
the
s-
different formats that it will accept. Now, again, this is a very new product, and I would not be surprised if, next month or 6 months from now, it'll have additional capabilities. They're constantly adding new things to it. So
Amazing.
once you start using it, it's amazing. I love this. This is the best application I found with AI, in addition to just a regular chatbot that really makes my life a lot easier because it really saves me a ton of time when I have a large document or something like a 2-hour podcast that I want it to summarize. It does a really nice job of that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
right.
And thank you for your generosity and your time. I look forward to playing with this, and
Good.
perhaps, in a few months, we bring you back after everybody's had
For
some
sure.
time to play.
There'll be 100 new things to talk about in 2 months.
Absolutely. Well, Victor, really, thank you very much. And everybody have a nice evening.
Thank
I
you.
want to remind our members and volunteers that, speaking of books and movies and videos, next week we are showing This Boy's Life. And as a follow-up in June, the author will be joining us. Tobias Wolff will be here. And so if you haven't read his book and you don't want to stick it through an AI resource, come see the movie and then you can meet the author. So have a nice evening, everybody. Have a great time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn.
My
Bye-bye.
pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you.